Hi, Nori. I think you're muted.
Hello.
Hi there. So I think Anne's going to join us. She's just finishing her Tai Chi. There's Nancy. Hi, Nancy. That's the muted wave. And Lynn. Lynn, are you on a cell phone again? Could
I'm in
be.
my
Oh,
office.
there she is.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me what documents you're going to ask me to show? I pulled all the ones that were on your last email. There were 5 of them.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I didn't.
Well,
I didn't. Did I? Did we get the minutes? The proposed minutes?
no, we haven't
Oh,
gotten
okay. Good.
those yet
Good.
that
Fine.
I've seen.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it.
In fact, in a moment of panic, I'm thinking, who was supposed to do the minutes?
Uh, Antrim, wasn't he?
I think it was Austin, who, as
Austin.
always.
Yeah, he volunteered. Bless his soul.
Yep. Well, let's just get the assembled multitude together and then we'll kind of figure it out. I think folks are still coming in.
Yep. I live to be about 108. I will probably have learned as many little internet uh, clues as I will ever learn.
Well, I have to say that I love depending on other people to pull things up on the screen. I find it
Yeah, well, don't
too
don't put too
scary.
much faith there. As long as we've got Ellen in the background, we're in business.
I think Ellen and Austin and the whole gang.
Yeah.
So it looks like we are together. I'm Lynn Spencer. I am calling the meeting of Nahant's Community Preservation Committee to order. It is Monday, the 24th of February, and the meeting is starting at 2002 or at 7:02. Um, with me tonight are committee members Paul Spurn and Ellen Goldberg, uh, Austin Antrim, all appointed at large, uh, Dave Wilson from the Housing Authority, and Nancy Catalmo representing Open Space and Recreation. I represent the Historical Commission. So we have some visitors. We have Nori here from the public library. I don't see anyone else's yet, but let me look. Oh, Deborah Warren is here from FinCom. If I've missed anyone, they will sing out. The first item of business is review of the minutes from the previous meeting, if those are available. That's an if. But that was a pregnant pause too. So I was waiting. Um, Austin, do I remember that you gallantly volunteered to do the minutes?
That is certainly possible. If that is true, then I did not get them done. I've been under the weather for several days.
I am
I
sorry to hear
apologize.
that. Is that a family affair? Because I saw your dad on the screen at
Yeah,
church
actually,
yesterday.
he was sick as well. I have
Yeah.
some, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and stay in the meeting this evening, but there is a chance I may have to leave abruptly.
Oh,
Okay, well, we will appreciate you as long as you're able to be with us.
Thank you.
In the absence of Austin doing the minutes, I'm looking for a volunteer, and I'm volunteering my dear self. How's that?
my goodness.
Anyone else in objecting to that?
Nope.
Remember, he who takes the minutes controls the meeting. Oh, no, I didn't say it like that.
Oh,
Dave, you didn't hear me say that.
I know nothing.
But I will. I'm getting my good old notebook and my pen out. So, in the absence of the minutes, I think we can go right into our summary, because we have actually reviewed various, we've had conversations with various applicants, and we are now in the challenging role of reviewing and beginning to make our grant recommendations. In our last meeting, we had a consensus of the famous phrase, we are inclined to agree with the six applications that we had in front of us. Paul, if you'd be kind enough to pull up the summary that I sent out, I guess it was on Friday, I would be appreciative.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I got the right thing coming up here. Now, why is that not? Come on. Why is that? Okay, which one is it that you want? You want the one for 26?
Yes, with the
Okay,
$500,000 for the library showing on it.
or you want the 500,000 for the library? Okay,
Yep.
there it is.
It's-
So now I got to share it. Hold on, one thing at a time. I think this is what I want. Are you seeing the right thing?
Yes, because I
Uh-oh.
changed the color on this one.
Oh,
You
yeah,
did. You fooled me, Lynn.
So I sent out an email and with last week with a lot of material on it, and I was asking the committee to do their best to review what I was putting in front of them. But what you're seeing with this chart is what we discussed in the meeting, having to do with the public library. But instead of actually going right to the public library or to the first one on the list, I'd like to actually start with what I consider fairly straightforward applications. So if we could look together at number 3, the American Legion and Town of Nahant. This is for 2 flagpoles at the Veterans Park. It's for $9,243. Folks, I'd like to actually sort of get things that we could comfortably vote decided tonight. And that's why I'm going to this one first. Is this something that we as a committee support as an article for the town meeting?
Yes.
So shall we discuss?
Yes, you can say yes
Okay.
or no or nada, whatever.
Well, my contribution to the discussion is that I see no reason why we shouldn't.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would vote for it if it comes up for a proposal. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Is this something you would vote for as an article at town meeting?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
yes, I would. Yep.
And you're saying like regardless of the money, like is this something that we would advance, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, me too. Yes.
Okay. Nancy? Nancy, are you there?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Still muted.
Now
Ah.
now it's better.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And I also agree with the committee on supporting this,
Okay.
except if we don't have some money thing that changes how we look at everything.
Right.
Right. Well, if you've studied this, you understand some of this is going to be about money, for sure. Okay, so that's an easy one. Let's get that aside. Let's go to another one that I consider fairly easy, and that is the number 2, the Housing Authority. And I'll tell you why. We need to put aside 10% of our annual funding, which is just over $443,000. And so this falls squarely into that kind of logic. Anyone for a vote on this one?
I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yes.
Yes, for Dave.
Okay.
Yes, for Ellen.
Yes for chair. Okay, good. So that one's done too. Okay. Now I'd like to go to another one that maybe in, a little bit of a competition under the category of open space and recreation. But I'd like to go to number 6, the Bailey's Hill Ecological Management Phase Part 2. Anyone for yes, I would move this forward as an article under the 10% category open space.
Austin, yes.
Nancy for yes.
Yep. Austin said yes.
Dave
Yes.
says yes. Yep.
Yes. Paul.
Okay. Alan,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Okay. All right. Now we're going to get into the 3 that, have perhaps kind of jostled their elbows together. Let's just sort of jump up to the Town of Nahant's application for the Pleasant Street Playground. This is for a variety of devices that were proposed by the Town of Nahant with the Recreation Committee. The comments that we had shared last week are shown here in this column, which is reservations were expressed about the proposed chapel structure and the plastic flowers, in contrast to the natural materials and quality of the public library, which is next door to this playground. Do those words capture the feelings expressed last week and held perhaps today?
Well, I would expand them a little bit because I feel that the renovations and improvements that were made to the Little Nahant playground had a somewhat different feel than plastic structures and plastic flowers. They look, as you say here, as if they were made out of natural materials. But more than that, they look sturdier and even more in keeping with more traditional playground structures. So if someone can make an argument that the kinds of things that are being recommended are in fact more durable and more usable and more enjoyable or more enjoyed by children, then I would go beyond this inclination of mine to ask for more. And I wondered what the rest of the committee thought about the presentation that we heard and the things that were being proposed. They didn't seem very specific to me either.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul,
Anyone else?
um, just to Paul's point, I think if I remember correctly, the Pleasant Street playground as opposed to the one closer to Little Nahant. I think they were trying to capture different age groups, or cater to different aged children at
Yeah.
the playground. So I think that's why the materials we're seeing being chosen for this one are quite a bit different than the other playground. But I think they also were chosen due to, being quality and durable for the intended purpose.
I agree
you.
with what's been said, Nancy, and I think these are probably durable, although quite expensive. But I also think we're all trying to say, while the Little Nahant playground has a different theme and age group, it has a cohesiveness about itself and its location that we're kind of striving for with a library playground next to a historic building.
Okay, thank you. Well said. Who else?
Lynn, the other day, last meeting, Tony brought up the thing about the spring animals that are at different parks. So what I have found, from working at Public Works is those animals are not for smaller people. And a lot of them have been broken or even adults have been using those. So I wouldn't even recommend being put up there. They're not age appropriate.
Oh, thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, this is Ellen. So two comments. One is regarding the specific text that you have in this cell about the proposed chapel structure and plastic flower. So the thing about the proposed chapel structure, there were three building choices in the attachment that they gave us. Sorry, I have to put this on Do Not Disturb. And one of them was a chapel, one of them was a cottage, and one of them was a schoolhouse. And so I felt that personally, that a schoolhouse or a cottage was more inclusive than a chapel. Like I felt like if I were bringing my kids there and there was a chapel there, I'd be turned off immediately, and felt it would feel it was meant for somebody else. And I don't think that's the vibe you want to present. So that's just regarding the chapel. I think a structure is great, let the playground consultant give the right advice on where to put what and what to buy and stuff. I'm not the expert. So a structure is great, in my opinion. And then just to the other comments about the Little Nahant playground and the whale and the public library, it does seem that, and to Nancy's point about cohesiveness, it does feel like there's more of a theme to the one at the beach, right? And so if we could give some advice here or some guidance, I would say, consider the beautiful historic building that it's next to and what that building does and what people are doing there with their kids. And if there's a way to kind of make it a continuous, feeling, right? In other words, there's a theme on the other playground. Can there be, can you create something like that here as well?
So let me ask you this. I'm getting the tenor of this. Are we willing to actually look at a recommendation that says, here's an amount of money. We would like to offer these conditions.
I think, in my opinion, it really would depend on how detailed those conditions got. I would not feel comfortable, not being an expert, not being in meetings with the playground consultant. I would not be comfortable dictating what they have to do. Exactly.
So give me a condition that you would feel gives them the flexibility and the
No
creativity.
chapel. No chapel.
Well, I said the chapel, Ellen. So, but You know, I think what I'm hearing is a design, an effort for design cohesiveness that is appropriate to the setting, which is the town hall, you know, which is a good building, and the public library, which
Right.
is also offers learning opportunities related to the learning place that is the public library. I mean, come on, I'm spitballing. Help me,
No,
somebody.
I think you just did it great.
Oh, stop it. I gotta write it down now.
Um, yeah, I mean, you know, consider for me, the chapel thing is inclusiveness. So to consider inclusiveness of your audience.
Mhm.
I feel like a cottage or a schoolhouse is really not limiting to our
But we
audience.
don't even have to give them that kind of information. We can say inclusive, age appropriate, durable, and appropriate to the setting.
Yeah.
So is the setting one of architectural features or essence of use, like asking them to think about literary or story references?
I think what I
Is that where
suggested,
we're
Paul,
headed?
no,
Okay.
yes and no. I was suggesting the architectural setting, which is the town hall and the public library, and
Okay.
the purpose of the library, which is learning and
Right.
exploration. But that is about as far as I would go in terms of saying, here's the requirements.
Right. Well, that sounds good to me.
Okay, I'm just writing it down now. With that, folks, I'd like to hold on the dollar amount, if you will, as we kind of go back and look at the other two grant applications in front of us, because I think this may be a place where there's some adjustment. I'll just say that. Does that make sense to everyone?
Agree.
Did you say hold, H-O-L-D? I heard fold, but I don't
Hold,
think you said that.
hold.
H-O-L-D, got it.
But I've gotten an important condition if we actually then return to the dollar amount. Okay?
All right.
All right. I'd next like to go, because we have representatives from the public library here and we're talking about what's next to it. Let's talk about the public library. Now, in this particular model, what I've given you is what I advanced last week as an option, which is to address the fact that the library is looking for help with the building envelope work, as well as addressing critical work in the building related to replacement of the electrical wiring and with it upgrading of the service to the building, with fire suppression and a fire detection system. And what I tried to share with you is that this has been work that Ann Spurn, as chairman of the trustees, with her committee and with her fellow trustees, and with Richard Smith, the architect, have been putting together, have discussed with Tony at Town Hall. And while Town Hall initially thought they would have a greater amount of free cash to put towards this project, they are in a situation where they're really strapped, particularly this year. So what we are looking at is the possibility that the CPC would consider when you think about the total cost of what we're talking about, it's $700,000 between the CPC application and this work on the interior infrastructure, the fire suppression, detection, and electrical wiring. What I'm showing here is the idea of a $500,000 bond with the town providing $200,000 in free cash towards this project for this year. I had asked Allison at Town Hall to show us what it meant to have a $500,000 bond. And in the materials that I sent to you last Friday, I also provided the projection over 10 years of that $500,000 bond. I actually showed you what it meant next year. And you can see that what happens with bond obligations is that over time, the balances decrease. In this particular model, I'm showing what it means to have the first year of that $500,000 bond at $78,500. And then as you look further down on the chart that Paul has kindly pulled up on the screen, you see that we are looking at retiring the fiscal year 19 library bond in its entirety. And then we are also carrying a reduced in interest only amount for the fiscal year 22 bond, but for fiscal year 23, we're showing both principal and interest. You know, as you know, folks, we can kind of move this up and down. Big picture, when we look at this $500,000 bond here, along with the other applications we have in front of us, we have a subtotal, of costs that are just over $600,000. We are short on our funding this year because we're looking at a 40%. If you can pull it down a little bit, Paul.
Yep.
We're looking at a 40% match from the state. So we're looking at $432,000. We have a general reserve of $134,000. So, and then we have, you know, the other way that I think we need to think about this, and that is a series of clawbacks that could bring in as much as nearly $120,000. So as I know that it's a lot to take in, but as we consider what it means to have this commitment to preservation and life safety at the public library, you know, we also need to be, I will say, creative about how we're approaching the funding.
We also have the good possibility of more money from the grant to put to the library.
That is true. That is true, Nancy. We've always been conservative about our match. If that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, this year I'm carrying $40,000. Gosh, in the past, we've never gone below 70% state match. So this is kind of a lean year, but it could be better. Just to remind everyone, the state match is generated by real estate transaction fees. So at the Registry of Deeds, when, you know, loans are made or sales of property are made, there's a fee, and that goes into the fund that is then part of the state match. So I've just done a lot of talking, and I was hoping that you would all have a chance to look at these schedules as well as the clawbacks, which I had actually sort of highlighted in pink. I've also had conversations with various of the groups related to those clawback groups, except for the town hall. I haven't gotten a response from them, but I've talked with the Historical Society, the Open Space and Recreation Committee, the library. So.
This is Ellen. I am 100% in favor of the clawbacks as long as the money is no longer needed. Right, and that we're not taking money from projects that we've approved and that people need. So as long as you've spoken to those people, we should get back as much as we possibly can. The question I have about all the bonding is just, if you look at the big, and this is a question, it's really a question, because we're gonna have to bring this to the finance committee and we're gonna have to bring it to the town, right? So the question is really, how fiscally responsible is it of us to recommend all this bonding?
We won't have any more bonding than we have right now, Ellen. We're
Okay,
retiring one bond and we're replacing it with another.
okay,
So
that's a good answer.
it's kind of a consistent approach.
Mm-hmm. Do
I think one thing I will say, sorry, just one thing I have seen is over the years, continuing deferring of work at buildings ends up costing more. I know I've said something you all know.
Sure, I know it personally.
Yeah, we all do.
Just the price of that knob and tube day was an unpleasant day.
Yeah.
Do we, and maybe this is a little bit getting ahead of myself, I'm gonna ask it anyway, is there anticipated support or pushback from the town itself during a town meeting for this kind of continued support of the library, which I am in favor of? I'm gonna say that up front. I'm just wondering, what is the appetite out there for this kind of work on a continuing basis? Do we have a sense of that?
You know, I'm going to stop talking a moment because I've talked too much and let Ann Spurn or Nori from the public library step
Hi.
into that question.
Can I say something? Yeah. This is Nori, the director. I just want to say I had that question before. I've only been here just over a year. And I did a lot of research going into the CPC grant. So I wanted to know the answer to that question when it came to the terrace, right? That was the big project that cost a lot of money in the past for the library and required a lot of work. So I went in and I looked at it, and that had a lot of support. The town supported funding at town meeting for the terrace. It supported everything that's gone to the town. All the work that's gone to the town for every town meeting for the library has always gone through, as far as I can tell. I've only gone back and looked at it for the last 10 years in total transparency, but I haven't seen anything that hasn't been supported at the town meeting level. So if that answers your question, to me, that's like, what can be more positive than that? It looks like the town has come forward and supported the library over and over again, as far as I can tell.
Thank you, Nori. Ann?
Yeah, as a trustee, we're just faced with, what we're faced with is a historic building,
Yeah,
you know, that's what, 130 years old. It's, am I right with the, I don't know if that's the exact figure, but over 100 years old. And there's been deferred maintenance, you know, so.
130 anniversary this year.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, to me, it's so difficult, you know, the fact that our electrical system, I mean, we're in a dangerous situation with the library. It would be a catastrophe to lose the library to fire. And the fact that we don't have sufficient electricity. It's you know, historically, we've gotten almost nothing from the town itself. I think Nori did the figures, it was about $1,000 in the past. So the town is coming up with $200,000 this year, but that's not even enough to do the electrical work.
yeah.
That's that. And it can't even touch fire protection. So it's it's just speaking as a trustee, elected, entrusted with the building and all of its contents. It's so difficult. We don't, we don't have other places to go.
So I think the question is, do you have a constituency? Do you have support in the town when it comes to the town meeting? That's the question. And Nori has given us, you've had consistent sort of positive votes over the 5 or 6 grants that have been given to the library, whether it was major repairs or cataloging of artifacts and so on. So I think the
yeah.
answer is you have support, and
We
you should
do.
actually marshal support in the town meeting.
We do, and if you may remember the town meeting where the vote was taken on East Point, we also brought, we needed a third staff member, and we were not being given it by the town budget, and we came and asked the town to vote, and it was overwhelming. We had overwhelming support to add the staff member. So, I
Okay.
think that there is definitely support there. It's just, and
Thank
we, yeah,
That,
Okay.
I appreciate the answer. That's really, I was just, because we have continued to support it, and I think part of me is worried that eventually the town will stop supporting it. So I'm asking, it's an honest question.
Yeah.
If we think that there's support for this kind of work moving forward, there's no judgment at all. It's truly a question.
And I would say that with the building envelope work, we actually, there's a building fund within the Friends of the Library, and individual residents have contributed money to that fund. And we did draw from that fund to hire Richard Smith to do a study of the envelope. And he hired, and also we hired a mason to come in and remove the covering, drill some holes, and really look at what the situation was in order to be as sure as we could that the estimate for the building envelope was as close as possible, and that we weren't going to get any nasty surprises like we did with the terrace.
Thank you, Anne. Appreciate that.
And I think that the question that was posed has to be understood in the context of where the library request sits among these half a dozen requests. It's the big one. And the big one has is in a special circumstances. The spotlight will be on the library.
Yeah.
And I think that the library would do well to marshal its support enthusiastically and aggressively before the meeting comes up, so that people know what is at stake. I do remember the very heartwarming response of the town when faced with big East Point problems. It nevertheless stood up and said, how can we continue without a third librarian? I agree. That was a wonderful experience. But I think preparation is the name of the game here. You can't rely on that good feeling lasting forever uncritically. It has to be stoked and explained and marshaled.
We agree, and that's on our agenda this winter.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I would support that education of the people about the fact that this town, the character of this town includes buildings like the library and its purpose that mean we have to make this commitment. But we also probably have to say that that's ongoing, and we all have to understand that. And also that we may run into lean years in CPC coming forward where we're in this bond again.
Thank you,
I think that-
Nancy.
And
Yeah.
the dangerousness of the library has to be made clear to people,
Yes.
which I don't think most people understand at this point.
Yes.
We agree.
Would you want your children or your family to be in this building? Even though more people have been coming lately compared to past, it seems to be important to the town in that regard too, that they responded to more programming, which is another point we need to tell people, the popularity among the town.
Yes, I think it should be explained at the meeting as
Yeah.
a preliminary to the very specific and different request this year, to say that the last time the library came to the town at the meeting, people spoke up for staffing, and look what we have done with it. And
Okay.
that will, I think, give people the satisfaction of knowing that they were right to do what they did.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I like that too.
Okay. Well, other comments from the committee?
Hey,
Have I
Lynn,
lost? I was Austin here. I was about to say, have I lost Austin? No, he's here.
Good.
So because I've been a little ill, I did not get to go through all the documents that Nori provided as thoroughly as I would have liked. But I did come up with a few questions, and like Ellen, I just want to preface this with I love the library, in particular the building, and definitely support work to maintain it because it really is amazing for Nahant to have a building like that. But a couple of questions I came up with, I didn't see, and I may have just missed it, but clearly spelled out what the last bond, I think it said 300,000 from the last 500,000 bond went towards the library, and I believe that was also exterior envelope work, but it wasn't very clear on what work that accomplished, and it may not be necessary, but I did see some notes that I think were related to the most recent investigation that pointed to re-examining the lead flashing that was done in 2022 in several areas of the building. Is that one of the areas they suspect this water infiltration is coming from? Work that was done within the last few years?
So I think there was lead in the north wall where there's the, what's it called? The efflorescence. So there is water penetration in the north wall, which is the wall facing the playground.
Right.
But I don't think lead was a major concern. I think they took pieces of the wall from there, from the attic, and above the Nahant room.
But I think what Austin's asking, Nori, is whether some of the problems that need to be fixed were part of the expenditures in the last couple of years, and I do not believe that's the case.
No, no.
Yeah, I would agree with
This
you.
is a new problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may have misread that. I apologize. I'm trying to read through some chicken scratch notes I wrote down.
You need to train a chicken to read it to you.
I have the same problem.
I guess one of my other questions is just, Lynn, if you could talk me through how we got to the $500,000 bond. I see, I may have missed some of the amounts, particularly the electrical, what the expected cost for the electrical work.
So this is where it is deep dive into documents. In 2019, with the conditions assessment report prepared by Richard Smith, there was a cost estimate with a number of categories. The cost estimate was prepared by a professional cost estimator based on the engineer's reports as well as the architect's recommendations. So those numbers were, were $165,000 for the electric, $91,000 for the sprinkler system, $36,000 for fire detection that kind of relates to the sprinkler system. They subtotal $292,000. When you then add on an escalator for the subsequent years, which is nearly, how many years? 6 years. It pulls it up to $379,000. So we take that $379,000 and then add in the $350,000 estimate for the exterior envelope. It's a little bit over $700,000, but that is how scientifically that cost estimate was derived.
Understood. Thank you, Lynn. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had missed that large number for the electrical somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a large number. And quite honestly, I think, there's engineering that gets involved with this. It's a service upgrade. We need to increase the amperage in the library because they're maxed out. So I think that always the question with a building like this, it's a landmark building and it's as we heard 130 odd years old. There will be continuing need for maintenance. There's not going to be an end to this story.
Right.
I truly wish that the town was able to participate more than they have been. And I think, with the building committee, which includes Mark Cullinan, myself, and Robin DiStefano, we've been having conversations with Tony about the future because there will be more work in the future. I mean, in the best of all possible worlds, it'd be wonderful to capture that space above the receiving room for usable space. But in order to do that, there would have to be an investment in, vertical access for handicapped access and, renovations and so on. That's in the future. The most immediate thing right now is something that Anne and the trustees with Nori have really put forward so strongly, and that is we've got to deal with the electrical. Ellen, you had it in your house. You know what we're talking about. Knob and tube, if it seems stable until something happens, the cloth covering gets frayed, a rodent gets involved and has a good chew on it, and then there's a short and there's a spark and then there's a fire. So that's what everybody is worried about here. So
Lynn, this is Nancy. Sorry to interrupt, but I have a question. We discussed the fact that for load-bearing stone buildings, the joinery is the weak part that deteriorates with time. So we won't know until over time, I presume. But is there any newer material in development that might not deteriorate so readily in the future, or are we stuck using the same stuff they used 130 years ago?
Nancy, that's a great question. And I'll use as an example something that I've sort of fussed with now for, I hate to tell you how many decades, But some of us will remember when Portland cement was viewed as the most durable material you could ever use. It would last forever. And lots of historic buildings in the, were then sort of treated with Portland cement mortars. What we found is that those mortars were too hard for load-bearing masonry that didn't allow the moisture that is natural to accumulate in load-bearing masonry to evacuate. That's kind of, I know that's kind of a crazy example of a so-called modern material that would last a long time, but it then created a whole host of problems. That's why when we're dealing with historic masonry, we have to make sure that we use a mortar that is actually in line, basically based on the original, as long as it was functional. I don't know if you had other thoughts about that line of questioning that I've just rambled on too long with.
No, because it comes up when we have to tell people this is going to go on and on and on.
Well, I
like
mean,
Austin-
yeah,
like
but every
Austin said,
building we know needs maintenance.
right, but do we just whether we have any better materials in the pipeline that might alleviate some of that problem in the next 130 years?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. I just gave you one example. The other one is slate. We all know that you can, in fact, we're going to talk about a roof in a second. You could replace a slate roof with asphalt shingles, right? It's a lot cheaper, but you'll replace that asphalt shingle roof 3 to 4 times in the lifetime of a slate roof. So it's always that balance of, first cost versus long-term maintenance.
I will just make a comment, just from some of the things I did see in the report, related to Nancy's question. I did see there was, I believe, an option for some sort of clear waterproofing or water-resistant material to go on some of the stone. And then there is some other structural wood members that need some work, that they're recommending replacing with some laminated beams. So they are using some modern
Yeah.
techniques
Yeah,
and materials to address the older issues.
that's a good point. I, by the way, would be the one to argue against the waterproofing coating, but that's a whole other thing, Austin. Anyway, but I think Nancy's point is well taken. What can we do that will help actually preserve the building, make it a good investment, and be persuasive in that argument?
So Lynn, you may know the answer to this. So the FY23 bonding, am I correct that that one was 500,000 split between town hall, library, and the cemetery?
Yeah,
And did 300,000 of that go to the library?
approximately.
I think
Yes.
that's right, yeah.
Is that all spent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So let me ask you this. Are we inclined to support the $500,000 bond for the library if we can sort of provide the funding in a way that will be consistent with leaving us some amount of general reserve?
I support it.
Yes, I think I'm inclined to support it as well.
And we also know that there's money from the Friends that could support some interior work that needs to be done, like the vertical lift stuff, probably.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
persuasive to other people outside who might say, why should we give money to them? What are they doing to help? Well, the writing grant And they're also get support with their own friends funding.
Okay. So
Yeah, I think
Nancy, is that a yes, you are inclined?
Yes, yes, it's a yes.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I would like to see an aggressive attempt made to rejuvenate the Friends. Maybe that's not the right word.
Resuscitate.
Reinvigorate the Friends. And have them start stepping up in all sorts of ways. And if the library has any real prospect of starting a capital gifts campaign, that now is a good time to get that started and document it so that you can publicize it. All good things, I think, to get people behind you.
We are in a quiet mode of fundraising prospects.
Well, that's good as long as it turns into something more vocal. If it stays quiet, then it doesn't have the impact.
No, that's in advance of a public
Sure.
announcement.
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. Dave, could I ask your thoughts? Are you inclined to support this?
Yes, I have a couple maybe suggestions is,
Okay.
you know, if the library trustees, they're looking for money, why don't they like educate the people, like have an open house to show them exactly what's going on upstairs and some of the wiring and
Mhm.
something like that to show them what the money's actually gonna go for, you know?
I love that idea, Dave.
Excellent
Thanks.
idea, Dave.
We've talked about doing just that, inviting
Good.
people to come in and give tours.
Good.
Yeah,
That's a
and
great
Great thought.
idea.
the other thing is, I know probably in the future you need a heating system. So you ought to just take them downstairs and let them show, because I've worked in that building and I know what it is. So if they don't see it, they gotta say, oh, you want 500,000, what for? You gotta educate these people.
Yes, Dave, I think you just signed up to be part of the tour.
Yeah.
I could do the tour, yeah.
I know you could. I know you could. You know that basement.
But in addition to that show and tell stuff, we also need maybe like library newsletters to go out to people to like explain things that they can think about and talk about, and get invited to an open house discussion about creative ways to work on this now and in the future and make people feel like they're part of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
We have a limited email list. And we've been trying to figure out ways to expand our reach through email.
We actually have a newsletter with a lot of people on it.
How many are on your mailing list, Nori?
Quite a lot. I don't have the number with me, but it's pretty big.
Well, I don't know how many email addresses there are in town, but there are probably more than 4,000 email addresses in town.
I want to say we might have like half the town on our.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah,
I
we
was
have
thinking of
it.
something more tangible too, like they could hold in their hands, not that was fleetingly technological.
Yeah. Well, you can always print it.
Yeah, and with pictures of the problems and
Yep. Right.
explanations of the finances and stuff.
Nancy, that is a wonderful idea, and we will follow up on that and have handouts at the library.
And a lot of historical facts about how important that we had one of the first public libraries in the country.
Mm.
It's true. We really did. 1819. That was it.
Right. I think
Well-
I think we were the second, actually.
Yeah, who was the first, Nancy? Do you happen to know?
Franklin or something like that.
Franklin. Okay.
Mm.
Wow. Think about that. Well, this discussion has been really interesting and far-reaching. So I think I'm going to actually move on, if you don't mind, unless anyone else has a
I would
burning thing.
I would just like to thank you all for your service and for your thoughtful comments and questions. And we've taken note of some of your suggestions, which, you know, we will absolutely do. Thanks, Nancy, for your last comment.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. You are welcome to stay with us, folks. Austin, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you to both Nori and Ann for their time and efforts here.
Well, folks, that sort of leads us back to the last application for us to discuss, and that is the Nahant Preservation Trust application for the life-saving station roof. At our last meeting, Austin, you asked for a more updated cost estimate, which I understand is in preparation. But you know, for the moment, I have to say, based on my experience, this is a reasonable number for the complexity and nature of that roof, which is a request for $150,000, which is being matched by the trust. At the same time, I know the trust is in the process of preparing and submitting a Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund grant application, which is due March 16th. They will hear about the status, whether they receive a grant, which might be probably in the $50,000 range in mid-June. So on a, if you will, on a tactical basis, it's important for the trust to be able to say we have match capability from CPC funding, because they have to provide evidence of match. At the same time, if they don't, and if they get the grant, that would mean less of a draw on CPC funds. But if they don't get a grant, I think that they would be hoping that the committee would recommend, you know, the $150,000 grant. Is that confusing enough for everyone? Did I really wind myself around the axle on that one?
No, that made sense.
Okay.
So, Lynn,
Yep.
so the actual price is 180 and they got a
Yes.
match of 30? Is that what
Yes.
you're telling me?
Yep. You want to just scroll up again,
Sure.
Paul, so we can
I'm
get to the
sorry.
top?
I'm asleep at the switch here. Hold on.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go, Dave. There it is.
Lynn, I just wanted to comment, when I was asking if they had a more firm quote, I didn't really elaborate on why I was asking that. I had to buy some cedar shingles a couple years ago, and I was shocked at how
Yeah.
much the price had increased. I'm hoping it has gone down since, but
Nothing
that
ever
was sort
goes down.
of, I just know that I don't know. I was involved with a similar historic roof installation, and I'm aware of how much waste is required when you have a lot of hips, valleys, and dormers, like on the
Yeah.
life-saving station roof. So I was just concerned about the cost of materials really being.
Whether it's enough.
I was hoping we had a firm handle on that in this
Yeah.
estimate. That's all.
Yeah. I agree with you. The cost of cedar shingles has gone up. And I know that this roof, you know, when it was publicly bid, which is always higher, quite honestly, in 2000, it was $100,000 roof. So if we use our rule of thumb on public bid being 30% higher, that would have made that closer to an $80,000 roof. So
Wow.
now we've added $100,000 on top of that estimate.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I hear you.
Another question, Lynn, and Austin, are these gonna be fireproof shingles? Fire retardant?
Well, the answer is Fire, the answer is no, that was not the basis of this. Fire retardant shingles are actually more prone to deterioration than, an untreated shingle. And I understand the concern about, if there's a fire and, sparks are flying around like we saw in Los Angeles or in Northern California, the roof could be involved in a fire. But I guess I was hoping that the lack of proximate housing or proximate fire types materials might be on the side of just using a conventional shingle. And with that, I'll stop talking and defer to Austin as to what his opinion is of this.
Yeah, it certainly helps that the life saving station has no other buildings around it. But I will just say asphalt shingles burn just as readily as wood shingles. So having an ember land on either would not be good. So even if we went on the cheap route here, that'd still be the same risk of fire to the roof, I think.
One thing I will say is that this building does have a sprinkler system, so that helps, to some degree.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
Yeah, I know you know, Dave.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions on this?
I think again, the education of the public to the importance of this building, if they don't already understand it, is going to be important in them wanting to preserve it. And also the current usage of the building, which many people have used for all sorts of reasons, it's become more important than only a historic structure.
Thank you, Nancy. You are right about that. It's used for all kinds of events.
I have a question for Austin. Can you use salt water to put out fires? Could you pump water from the ocean to put out a fire in that building roof?
That is possible, yeah. I hope we would never have to do that, but you can do that, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there'll be a long haul, Watson.
Wouldn't be so good for your pumps, I wouldn't think.
No, you have to give them a thorough flushing, but they did do that in the Great Lynn Fire, I believe.
Did
They
they?
pumped ocean
Yeah,
water, yeah.
Yes, we did. Yep. And also, years ago, when they bought a fire truck, that used to bring it down a wharf and suck the water, salt water to run the pump before they accepted it.
Wow.
I'm glad we don't do that
Interesting.
anymore.
No, I did back in 71, so.
Dave, you have a wonderful history between you and Austin. Really, yeah. What about it, folks? Are we in a position to recommend $150,000 as an article for the life saving station roof?
Yes, from Nancy.
Yes, I agree, Paul.
I agree. The cost could go up next year too if we didn't do something now,
Yeah.
Yes, from Ellen.
Yes, from Austin as well. Just to, I struggle with this a little bit just because the lifespan of wood shingles is not much greater than or is less than asphalt shingles at times. But, as I think about this, the town only has a handful of these beautiful historical buildings. And, if we were to go the cheap route and put asphalt shingles on that building in particular, one, it would probably never get put back to cedar shingles again. And two, it would look a lot worse than it does driving into town currently. I mean, I remember growing up what the building looked like, and I moved away for a couple of years and came back pretty much when the restoration was completed, and it was unbelievable seeing that transformation. And I was so happy to see the building saved. So thank you, Lynn, and everyone else for your efforts. But the Community Preservation Act really is the place to fund these projects. When a town can't commit the funds because of other operating costs, that is sort of partially why I think this act was created.
Yeah.
So there is
Yeah.
a funding mechanism to put towards these projects that otherwise get cast aside because of regular operating costs. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, and yes, I support this.
Watch out, Austin. You may have just put yourself in the position of being the advocate at town meeting for this article. That was a wonderful way of saying what CPA is about and why we have it. But thank you. Well, folks, now let's actually turn to the rest of the story. So, Paul, as you scroll down a little bit on this chart, please. Right, and stop there. So when we then take the grants and the amounts that we've just described, including the first year of the library bond, although as Paul pointed out last week, it may not be called upon in its entirety in year one. When Allison does the bands for the bonds, she only takes what is needed to cover the cost. So, but in any event, I showed year one the full cost. That brings the six articles as they current are listed with the administrative cost and the retiring of the fiscal year 19 bond, the payment of interest only on the fiscal year 22, the payment of interest and principal on fiscal year 23. That brings us, and then because we are a little short on the allocation of the 10% of our $432,000 of funding, we have to put $4,322 into the housing fund. So that sort of ups that a little bit. And so that brings us to $602,235.36. As we look down further at this list, we see the amount that we're projecting from CPC, which is $432,258. We see the use of the general reserve, $134,727. And then we're seeing what could be generated by clawbacks of $119,000, which brings us to $686,000. That would leave us with an $86,000 general reserve. Conceptually, everybody with me on that?
And just to put that in context, that's $50,000 less than we currently have in the general reserve.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Our general reserve has gone, we usually try to have around $100,000, so it'd be a little bit less than what we would hope for. But the general reserve is seldom called, it's a savings account.
Right. Now, would the housing reserve drop by the $40,000 that they have asked?
No, remember, we have 10% of each of our $432,000 goes into each bucket every year.
Right. Okay.
So they've asked for $40,000. That 10% is $432,000 and change. So that's why the the difference goes.
Oh, no, I know why the difference goes in. I'm just wondering whether from which end of the equation you were taking the 40,000. So you're saying it's coming out of the overall funding.
Yeah, the fiscal year 26.
Right, but it has to be a minimum of 10%, and it isn't, so the difference goes into the housing fund. Got it.
Right.
Yep.
So I think that the thing I'd like to ask is, did anyone have the courage um, or the chocolate high to go into the clawback schedule and see if there was anything that they felt like, oh, that's really objectionable. You can't claw that back.
Well, I think they all deserve to get clawed back. And I'd like to see Tony get moving on spending money on bringing the town hall up to accessible standards. And if not, let's get that money back, claw that back too. I want to see
Well, now
some,
I know I'll just jump in, Paul. I have seen
yeah,
plans on this, so I
good.
know that that's
Okay,
in motion.
that's great. That's great.
We do want town hall to be accessible. I think
We
that
did, we do indeed.
there are a couple of things from town hall that I left in there because we had a line item. There's still $54,000 from the fiscal year 23 grant for the town hall's acoustical and lighting improvements.
Oh, that's right. They haven't made those yet fully, have they?
Yeah, they've made some of the acoustical
Some.
improvements, but not the lighting.
Right.
But I left that in there. So the one that I was surprised by, and maybe somebody could help me on this, is that in fiscal year 22, we gave money, $17,000 to the Doric Club gangway and floats. And that has not been expended.
Yeah, I don't think they need it, actually, as I recall. I don't know if
I-
there's anybody else on the committee who knows. Austin, what about you?
I don't recall exactly when, but I had been asked to reach out to them to see if that was still something they needed. That may have been last year, and
Yeah,
Mhm.
they
yeah.
said they did want it available at
Really?
that time, but let me ask again because
I
I
thought that
believe
they needed to do it fast before our money would be released to them. So they did it, and
no, this is
my
for a
question is whether they,
davit. The davit is not in place, so
oh,
it was to lift up the gangway to the. They did
oh,
some work,
okay,
but not that specific work.
okay, okay.
Austin,
But
would you mind reaching out again
sure.
and seeing this? Because I don't want to actually grab it back unless, it's
Yeah.
grabbable.
Right. Right.
Lynn, I'm sorry, just quickly so I can write it down. What was the amount of funding in the year it was
It was
authorized?
it was 17,000 and it came out of the fiscal year 22 grants.
Okay, thank you.
So I hate to seem stupid, but Lynn, could you remind me why we are retiring the $175,000 library bond rather than continuing to carry it, which would cost a whole lot less than $175,000 this year?
Because we now are looking at another bond of $500,000.
Right.
So yeah, I do want to act. I don't want to have 4 bonds. How's that?
Right. No, I knew there was a rationale. I just wanted to hear it.
Yeah, I didn't want to have 4 bonds. I was trying to, yeah. I think the question was raised last week about, what happens when we start obligating, this money in bonds.
Right. I think I asked the question.
I think you did. And that's why I gave you another little chart because I just
Yeah,
love
I've got it.
messing
No,
around.
I've got it. I looked at it. I knew it was for me.
That's right. There's a little love notes embedded in some of this stuff, Paul.
Right,
But
right.
but yes, I think what happens is that with my calculation for next year, nearly 30% of our money would be tied up in bonds.
Right.
So, when we think about flexibility and, being able to be responsive to other, grant applicants, that's a bit tough.
Right.
If the committee's inclined, and I will send another sort of note to Tony to say, here's the clawbacks that relate to the town hall programs. Austin, if you would check with the Dory Club about that $17,000 grant. I've checked in with, like I said, the Historical Society, the Public Library, the Open Space Committee. And they were all like, sure, take it back. So I'd like to be able to start actually, laying out the articles that would serve as those clawbacks. Everyone sort of nodding their head enthusiastically. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Also,
Yeah.
we can start with the idea that if you don't start your work by 2 years or whatever we pick, you can expect to lose your dough.
That's right.
So Lynn, with that, limit to 2 years, is that something we can put it in the application?
Yeah, we have to.
We can, Dave, and we should. I think it's been informal in past discussions, but we need to get it in the application.
Well, it's just like the cemetery, I'm not gonna be a pain, but the cemetery archway was 75,000. Now it's up to over 200.
I know, and
That's
I
another thing.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. I've tried to keep that money intact, but I suspect there will be a grant application next year.
Well, they better hurry up, that's all I can,
Yeah, me too. I'm worried about it myself.
We'll have to make detours.
Yeah.
I just close the gate.
Yeah, close the gate, Dave. Well, you've got the back gate.
Well, yeah,
Well, folks, if we are kind of getting towards to use our great friend Mike Raworth's violent agreement stage, I'd like to start to lay out the articles for review with the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting, or in FinCom before it goes to town meeting, based on this chart. That make sense?
Sure.
When I say lay out the articles, does everyone remember what that means?
I mean, we have to write stuff.
Exactly, Nancy. Oh, I love that, Nancy. So which one would you like to write?
Yes,
Okay, you're going to do Bailey's Hill, right?
Bailey's helps.
Okay, excellent.
I'll do the housing.
Thanks, Dave. I think I was volunteering Austin for the life-saving station.
Sure, I can do that, and I can take the Legion as well since it's in close proximity there.
Well, thank you. That'd be great.
When do you need this done by?
Well,
Tomorrow.
yeah, tomorrow. I'd like to be able to review them next Monday.
So last year, Lynn, if you remember, everybody sent me a plain text version of their items and then I consolidated them into one document.
Boy, I do remember that with pleasure, Ellen. So
that seems to be a good way to proceed, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. Can I make a proposal for let's see, we have 2 items left, correct? The
Yep.
playground and the library.
Right.
I would volunteer Ellen to do the playground. And Lynn, why don't you and I work on the library one?
Yeah, I am volunteering for the library, Paul. So thank you.
I figured you were, and I would be delighted if you would let me look it over and make suggestions, and maybe that would help.
Okay, that'd be great. Ellen, how do you feel about the playground article?
I feel fine.
Good, thank you.
Paul, I didn't mean to take two applications if you
Oh, no,
are
you
feeling
go
left
right-
out.
You go right ahead.
So,
Remember, it's
folks, we
pretty
can,
straightforward. It's like, it's a couple of paragraphs total in the format of the,
Yeah,
essentially the town warrant.
that's
Yeah.
right.
right.
Okay, that would be very exciting, folks, if we could actually work on that for next week. I will then start also just composing the clawback articles, which are kind of pretty perfunctory.
So do you want do you want to have a document, like one whole document with all of the draft articles together in one document for next week's meeting?
That would be wonderful.
So then I need them, I would give you all till, Saturday or something, but I would put them together on Sunday night.
Okay,
So I need,
thank you.
Sunday by noon.
Okay.
Lynn, are we going to have to put anything in writing about the particular financing recommendations that we're making for the whole package?
Yes, but
Okay,
that's a table that will be at the end of this,
okay,
and I'll work with Allison on that.
okay.
And you're right to bring that up, Paul, because this will be the first time that we are really, dipping
Yeah, it's a
Dipping
complicated
deeply.
one. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
complicated one.
Yeah,
And the more complicated it gets, the more there's a natural inclination to wonder about it. That's all. And so I'm just
Oh.
trying to anticipate the milieu at the meeting.
yeah. Oh, FinCom will have a wonderful time with this, Paul.
Oh,
There's no
yes.
question.
Oh, yes.
No
Yes,
question about it. No
absolutely.
question about it.
Right, right.
Lynn, I have a question for you. Does Allison support this? Fiscally as well as philosophically?
Well, I haven't heard from her directly. She helped me on the library bond or on the bond calculations. And I have copied Allison and others and Tony at town hall on what we're looking at. But I'll ask her specifically, Nancy, to respond.
I just think if she, were able to say, this is fiscally sound and for this and this reason, she's pretty neutral to any of these issues, I think.
I think you've got a good point.
Lynn, Allison is away. I don't recall exactly when she's returning, but
I thought it was the 24th. I thought it
Okay.
was today. School vacation week had everybody kind of off and about.
true. Yeah.
It started back today.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Oh boy, folks, this is getting exciting. We are 3 minutes from 8:30.
Well, you just run a kick-ass meeting, Lynn.
No, I do not. But since that was recorded, Paul, I love that. I'll try to get that into the minutes.
Yeah, get that in, right.
Can I move to
Hey,
adjourn the
Lynn.
meeting?
Lynn, sorry.
Yeah.
Allison will be back in the office on March 3rd, so she is out
Oh.
all of this week. Yeah,
Oh gosh. Okay. Thanks, thanks so much.
sure.
Nancy, do you want to run that again?
I make a motion to adjourn this complicated meeting.
Thank you, Nancy. Do I have a second?
I do.
Everybody's so rushing
Right.
for that. All those in favor, Dave,
Aye.
Austin,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, folks. Thanks so very, very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Bye, everybody.
Right.
Bye-bye
night.
now.